Hey y'all, welcome to my channel, and I would like to thank all the new subscribers for joining my channel, and I hope you guys enjoy all the videos that I've made so far, and I really appreciate your support. And of course I want to thank the people who've been with me all this time. But today's topic, it's one that I've been wanting to talk about for a while. It's called The Things I Love About America. You cannot live in a country and not absolutely, like, love some things about the country. It doesn't mean that America is perfect. It just means that there are things that I absolutely love. So number one, so I don't know how many things I'm gonna talk about, but I'm just gonna go as far as I can, and my battery is low too. So, but anyway, the number one thing I love about the United States are the national parks. Every country has national parks. I don't dispute that, but America has done an absolutely amazing job of standardizing the parks, making them accessible to the public, and maintaining their natural beauty. I mean, it's been amazing to be able to visit the parks here in America. And I mean, I've been so far to obviously the ones that are here in North Carolina that are easily accessible in North Carolina, but I've also been to all the way to Acadia National Park, which is absolutely beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. We went in summer, and it was like cold, by the way, because it's all the way north in Maine, and just an amazing park. And I love camping, I love nature, so it made sense for me to be able to to visit the parks. There's still an amazing number of parks that I have not visited. I would love to visit Yosemite Park. I would love to visit, obviously, like Bryce Canyon Park. A lot of parks in the western side of the country I haven't visited because I live in the East Coast, but I would love to visit here in the East Coast. Of course, I've done, Pisgah National Park, I've done the Smokies, I've done some other ones, can't recall right now, but I love the parks in America, and they're accessible, and I would love for South Africa to really copy that, because everybody should have an opportunity to enjoy a national park. It's a national treasure, and everybody should enjoy it. There should be no cost. It should not be cost prohibitive. That's what I meant. I wanted so my number two thing I love about the United States are the roads. Oh my gosh, I love taking road trips in America. I took a road trip in 2015, which we drove almost 3,000 miles, which would have basically, if I had drove all the way, I could have gone all the way to California, but we went up the East Coast and all the way to Acadia National Park. And in America, you can hop on any major road and it will take you across the country. And they're open, clean, and very well maintained. They have easy exit. Everybody can access them. They it's a highway system. It's so easy to navigate this country, and so I absolutely love road trips for that reason. I just it's the best thing that I do with my family. I'm planning another big road trip that we're going to take hopefully in the next year or so. The third thing I love about the United States is relative safety. Of course, not every place in in this country is safe, and not every neighborhood is safe, and I understand that, but I can drive anywhere. I can drive to what people consider the ghetto and be fine. Of course, the television will make things look worse than they actually are, because that's how the media works in this country. I didn't understand this until I realized that I would hate this country if all I did was listen to the news. So I just go about with my life. I'm not saying that something will never happen to me, but a lot of people in the South, they can go away and leave the house unlocked and be fine. And not every neighborhood is like that, I understand, but by and large, America is a very safe country. Yes, America has issues lately with terrorism, which is something that is new, and Americans are starting to learn how to live with that. But even with that, I understand that somebody can bring that up. Again, America is a country of 400 million people. I'm using 400 million because it's not just the citizens, which are over 310 million or 315 million. It's not just American citizens that live in America. There are a lot of people who are not citizens, or who, you know, like, who are just residents or whatever, that live in America. So I don't know what that number is, but the point I'm trying to make is that it's a huge country, very spacious country, and because it's, you know, like, it's a very spacious country, it's, I would say, like, when something happened, let's say here, someone in California may not even feel a connection. Of course they feel a connection because it's one country, but it's so far from them that it feels like it's in another country. Okay, so on a fun side, Americans make a big deal about every holiday. I mean, it's not just American, it's commercialism. Like, Americans will buy pretty much for every holiday, and every holiday is a big deal, whether it's Halloween or Christmas, Thanksgiving. It's those little things that make America America, and people take part fully, and so that's a wonderful thing, you know, because Americans work a lot, and so they really do work a lot, and so it's important for Americans to take a break when they get a chance. Another thing I love about America, so the return policy. Americans, I mean, you can buy something at a store as long as you keep either the label or, you know, like, anything, you can just return it. Nobody gives you a hard time or thinks that you stole it or whatever. You just say, I don't like it, and no hard time, you return it, you get your money back, no big problem. Sometimes when I go to a store, I might not even have a receipt, and they just give me store credit if I don't have a receipt. So so that's another thing about America. Another thing is volunteering. Americans love to volunteer. They spend a lot of their time, you know, like, giving back, and that's something that in South Africa, I mean, we didn't have organized ways of doing things because it's a totally different culture at the time. Nowadays, people do volunteer, of course, but Americans volunteer, even, you know, like, whether it's, you know, like, some people, instead of spending their Thanksgiving with their own families, they might go to a soup kitchen or whatever and give their time. And I'm hoping to do something like that this year. I will have my own Thanksgiving, but if there's a place where they're serving food before Thanksgiving, I might give my time. And on another thing is, Americans, cars are cheap here. They are relatively cheap, and I use the word cheap because a lot of Americans can afford to buy a car. It's easy to find a house with 4 cars. Americans drive, especially in the South, they drive at a very early age. You saw my son, he was driving at 16. So most people will buy their high school kids cars because they don't have to deal with the bus system. They don't have to deal with the you know, like, some of the what do you call those, they don't have to transport their children learn to be independent at an early age. And so also housing, I think in America, of course, it depends on the price point, right? But most people will have basic housing. Even if you go to government housing, people will have housing because it's cheap. But obviously you can buy a very expensive house, like a $14 million, $100 million, or 175. I don't know what's the most expensive estate in America, but you can also get a house for $50,000, depending on, you know, like, on the area. You might get it for $80,000, you might get it for $150,000, but it'll be a home that's reasonable and safe. So that's definitely, housing is cheaper here in America. This is my second home here in America. We don't pay cash. We have to obviously take a mortgage out. Another thing I love about America is Americans are very casual. Okay, in South Africa, when I was growing up, a boss was a boss. In South Africa, in America, a boss is a colleague, is someone who works, who's responsible. He has his own job. At least that's been my experience. He has his own job, and his job does not necessarily involve him breathing on your neck. And Americans tend to address each other by first name, whereas in some cultures, countries, you have to recognize the hierarchy. Here you don't have to do that. Bob is Bob to everyone. Okay. And also Americans, again, this is here a generalization, Americans love to dress up, but it's mostly casual. You've seen Nike, you've seen all these brands that started in America. Some of them, a lot of them focus on casual dressing, and that's how many jobs, like, they even allow you to dress casually. I don't have to wear a suit at my job. I dress like this. I mean, I'm kind of dressed nice today because I met some people, but in general I wear jeans and t-shirts, and that's fine. It's acceptable, nobody, because it's all about the work rather than the look. Okay, you may look great. If you're not doing the job, then you might as well not dress up. Okay, so that's another thing. So okay, I know the stereotypes about America, and we can go to the airport, and people still pay a lot of money for their clothing. For instance, if you're buying a Nike or you're buying a pair of jeans, they still gonna be expensive, but most most Americans do not have to dress in a suit and tie when they go to the job. There are jobs like that, but depending on what you do. I'm in IT, so many times I'm under the desk trying to connect something. So so another thing that I love about America is cheap internet. Oh my gosh, I don't even know where to begin on this one, because guess what? A lot of times when I go to South Africa, even though I can afford to have internet in South Africa, I just get tired of every 5 seconds, because for me, when I spend 100 rands, I'm just making an example, on airtime, I don't expect to turn around and it's gone. And I don't know how to, I don't have the discipline that a lot of South Africans have. South Africans don't waste, they don't waste their airtime. Whereas in America, you don't even think about that thing. You don't even, it's not something you think about. There's Wi-Fi everywhere. So even, and you can just connect, and even for your own personal use, if you have like a phone service, my kids have had unlimited internet since they were like really young, not because, and this is not something that's only available for the rich, it's available pretty much for anyone who's willing to pay, and it's not as expensive. There are limited services if you want to really limit your budget, but again, you usually have a contract and you just pay whatever you think the contract says, and if you can afford it at the time, you just go with the contract. So that's a thing that actually South Africa needs to work on, because I believe that, let's forget about having free access to, let's say, Facebook. I'm talking about being able to access the internet, because the biggest divide today is digital. It's not necessarily, like, in other words, you can be anything because the information is out there at your fingertips. No reason for anyone to fail for whatever it is that they want to do, right? And then so I'll leave it at that with that. So another thing that I love about America are systems. Pretty much everything is a system in America. Water systems, there are standards for pretty much everything. So let's say if you're a company and you want to build something, It could be a connector to something, or a door, or whatever. It could be anything. There will be a standard, and you just build your whatever that you are making according to the standard, and that will basically make your product be accessible by other people, an aftermarket product where everybody will be able to buy it, or even another business can buy it because it may fit with their, you know, like, product because of those standards. From those standards, Americans create systems, I mean, systems for better or for worse, okay? As I said in one of my videos, as soon as you are born in America, the government knows about you. I mean, they know before you are born that obviously you're gonna give birth, how many people are going to give birth, so they need to keep those statistics so that they know how to prepare for growth, right? And they know they can do projections based on what's happening right now. So it's important for the American government and people in charge, and even businesses for that matter, to have access to information that is valid in real time. So when you give birth in a hospital, your child, somebody comes in near your bed and says, give me details of your child and everything, and the child is registered in the system, voila. And you look at water systems, okay, maybe they're not national systems, they are probably, like, let's say, a county system or a state system, but ultimately there's a system in place that is responsible for making sure things are working fine. But I mean, obviously the downside to that is that if a system is too big, then it becomes harder to change. So it's important that, you know, like, especially in nowadays, you know, like, for people who are planning, make sure that they think about how something will be changed. I mean, that's a good design, right? How will something will be changed? But anyway, one of the things, if you go to a grocery store in America, you can check yourself out, okay? I forgot to show you this, but maybe by the time this video comes out, I'll be able to show you. But you can go to a store, grocery store, buy what you need, and then go check yourself out, because a lot of people here do not steal. I mean, I remember when I first came to America, in maybe not my first job, because I didn't have my own, you know, like, workspace. I shared space with other people that I worked with. But my first job as a programmer, you know, like, people would leave money on their desks. I would leave stuff on my desk. Nobody would touch it. Excuse me, nobody would touch it because it's not theirs. And I mean, I know that's partly because people are not as needy, especially at the time, people were not as needy, and so as a result, there was no reason for anyone to steal from anyone, right? Not that people don't steal here, because actually, I would argue that the rich people do steal from the middle class, but that's something political. I'm talking on an individual level, and people here in America tend to I know there are instances where people still, it would be crazy to think that there are no instances. I'm talking in general, as a culture, people don't steal. People will come to your door, and maybe if they're selling something or whatever, or if you leave something out there, nobody's gonna touch it because it's not there. So in general, I say in general, and also it depends on what it is, right? If you leave your cell phone, maybe your nice cell phone somewhere, your computer, maybe someone might see it and say, hey, I'm just gonna steal it. But I've never had that problem. In fact, one of my first experiences here in America, I went to a store, to Walmart, and Luke was a baby at the time, and I forgot my bag. You know, when you a mom and you're holding a baby, grocery store, I forgot my purse in the cart, and so I went home. I actually drove home, left my purse in a cart in the parking lot, and I come home, somebody calls me and say, hey, did you leave because I guess I must have had my details in my wallet. I had my phone number and everything, and someone calls me and says, hey, did you go to Walmart and leave a purse? I'm like, oh, yes, I did. And so this guy gave me his address and said, please come and pick it up. And I went and I picked it up, and it was an, you know, probably a retired, you know, like African American man, but he gave me my stuff, didn't even touch it. So you get a lot of that here. People are just are not trying to be, you know, like, again, it has to do with a lot with the fact that a lot of Americans don't like to break the law. The average American does not like to break the law because the law here is very tough. Again, another thing, this leads me to one more point, which is the police here. Not just the police, but the services. Services, I mean, they run like a well-oiled machine. If I remember many times I look at asthma attacks, you know, like, and stuff like that, and I would call 911 because, you know, like, he's having like a bad case of asthma attack, and guess what? Within 5 minutes, the firemen and the ambulance are here, okay, within 5 minutes. And I was just like so amazed, you know. Yes, there are services that are not very good, but and Americans like to complain about the government because in America there's always a campaign against the government to convince people that only private sector can provide, you know, like, better services. But when you not as brainwashed, you can at least see that, you know, there are some things that the government does well. And I'm not advocating that, you know, like, only the government can do things well. I'm saying that there are things that the government does well, like, you know, like, if there's fire, one of my neighbors' house, their house burned down, and within like minutes the whole street was full of firemen. And so that's the kind of, you know, like, services that in South Africa many people can only dream about. And I'm not putting South Africa in a bad light because South Africa is a developing country, but those are the things that, in order for South Africa to grow, need to copy. How do we better serve the citizens, not just the rich citizens, but the average person? How do we better serve them? And South Africa is an opportunity to learn, you know, like, and build systems. Like right now in the village, they are putting electricity, right, which I'm happy because my mom has been like, for years she's been hoping that they would finally put electricity. And but to me there's no larger town planning, for instance, that goes into it. And if you want to maintain, especially